Hello, good afternoon.
Mm.
Not sure, right. Welcome to our live. There it is. Trying to get the right format. Welcome to our live. Thank you for joining us today. It still is off a little, but I'm not sure why. But anyway, that's
On a full screen.
right. Let's see here. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get our screen ready. All right. Hmm. Let's see here.
Very
There you go. Full screen. Welcome. Welcome to our live. We are the leaders of Newbury Fellowship. This is Elder Mark Sylvia for the leaders, and we're here to give you an encouraging word. And we believe God has put on our heart to do a marriage series. And it is titled Marriage Ain't No Joke. Now, to be fully transparent, God gave this to me several years back. I did it on Clubhouse, maybe a little on Facebook, but it's about marriage in a positive way. It's not in a negative way, even though it says marriage ain't no joke. It's just being real about marriage and things that happen in marriage. So thank you for joining us. Again, we are the leaders of New Breed Fellowship. We're here to give in and share an encouraging word. It's from God's heart to our heart to your heart. And so we hope that you stay and watch and join. As you join us, you stay and watch and hear what God has to say through us regarding marriage. And before we get started, there is a TikTok we did some years back. I actually had red hair at the time, and we're going to play that just to show how different we are. But God brings us together, or we get together, and then we are married and we are working to make this work. So before we get started into the sharing, we're going to go ahead and play this TikTok. Let's see, I don't know how it's going to do it with us. Maybe I have to remove us from the screen and put that on there, but let's see what happens. Let's see, where is it? It's right in front of me. Where is our video? Huh. It's like our video disappeared. Now that is not good because it was right here. We tested it more than once. And now, oh, there it is. All right, here we go.
Initiated the first kiss? Who apologizes first after a fight? Who is the funny one? Who is more romantic?
Wait.
Who is the most patient? Who's the better cook?
That's easy.
Who said I love you first? Who takes longer to get ready in the morning?
You definitely chose me for that.
Who is grumpier in the morning? Who's more stubborn?
You definitely chose me for that.
Who's the bigger baby when sick? Who is the social butterfly? Who is the messy one?
Ah, fuck.
Who spends the most money? Who loses their key?
So that's just showing how different we are, but we are together. God puts us together to become, as we'll say it in the sharing, to become one. And so the first session that we're having in this series is titled, this is week 1, Marriage Ain't No Joke. Today is May the 24th. And the first session is titled, You're Pushing My Buttons. And so as we get into this, we just want to lay a foundation about marriage and even relationship. Marriage is not just about surviving. Because some people get in marriage and they're just going to survive it until something happens where they're no longer in the marriage. Their spouse might decide to leave the marriage, the spouse might pass away. And so it's more than just surviving. Marriage is about learning how to love, grow, forgive, heal, laugh, communicate and stay connected through every season of life, because our life goes through seasons. It really does. And so it's more than just surviving and being in a marriage. And so this series that we're doing is designed for married couple, engaged couples, couples considering marriage, individuals desiring healthy relationships. So you can learn something from this even if you're not married, couples struggling silently, and couples wanting to grow stronger spiritually and emotionally. So this is a marriage series, but it's for anybody because we're all in relationships of some kind. And life, I say, is all about relationships. So marriage is beautiful, but it is work. You know, when you're a little girl, you're like, okay, I'm going to grow up and get married and have a house and a white picket fence. You can still do that, but it's going to require some work. So marriage is work. So it's going to help, again, couples who are engaged, couples that are, of course, marriage, those prayerfully preparing for marriage, and understand that love is more than emotions, the way we feel. Love is really more than that. It is commitment and communication, it's healing, it's sacrifice, it's laughter, it's growth, it's forgiveness, it's partnership, and God. A three-strand cord is not easily broken. So who's in the middle of that cord? Because you have three strands. You know how you braid a cord or a piece of hair? There's three strands, and a three-strand cord is not easily broken. And so we're gonna in this series, we're hoping that it create room for honest conversations between you and your husband, bring healing, encouragement, real life struggles, and biblical truth, restoration, personal testimonies, and practical relationship tools, things that are very practical to use in a relationship. Now, I will say this, if there is a dysfunction in the relationship, some type of abuse, then it's hard to really apply some of these things to your marriage because of the dysfunction that's going on, especially if it's in the form of abuse, which is physical, is the first one. When that is going on, it's hard to work through all the other stuff because of that. So if you're in a physically abusive relationship, then you need to get safety, get help, get shelter, get out of that because that's not right. That's unlawful. I've experienced that in a previous marriage. So I want you to just know that this, if you're in a physical, abusive, or mental, emotional relationship, then it's hard to um, function in that, stay in that. So I am not, or we're not a proponent of telling people to stay in that relationship, even if that's going on, because I don't see that as right and it's unlawful for something like that to be happening, especially the unlawful part is the physical part. And so as we go into this series, week one, marriage ain't no joke. You're pushing my buttons. We're learning to love beyond the honeymoon. Because we know that when you first even get in a relationship, that is the honeymoon also, even before you get married and go on a honeymoon. And we have been married, and this year in July, it'll be 26 years that we've been married. And so we do believe we have some experience where we can share with people, and we're still having experiences. You know, marriage is always this season that you go through. And so you're learning to love beyond the honeymoon. And let's go through some verses that we have here. James 1:19, it says, my dear brothers and sisters, because in God, we still even brothers and sisters, even though we're husband and wife. It says, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And I came with came up with a little type of acronym that I would Q2, S2, S2. Quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. So quick, slow, slow. Q2, S2, S2. That is free. Don't cost you none for that. So if we go and apply that, it would make things a lot more easier in our marriages. But we don't usually apply that. We want to say what we want to say really fast, and we don't want to. We don't want to wait and speak, and we get upset because we're not getting our way.
Or we're not being understood.
Or with what?
We're not being understood.
We're not being understood, and so
We know what we're trying to say, and we expect the other person to understand what we're saying. And so the frustration comes in when they're not understanding what you're saying, but you know what you're saying.
right, but still, you want to apply where you're slow to speak and slow to become angry, even if the person is not understanding what you're saying, and you just continue to listen to them. Philippians 2:3-4 says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. And so we are very selfish people as human beings. Let's keep it real. We really are. We're very selfish. I don't care what anybody says, even a little child, a baby learns to be selfish. And so we, even as adults in marriage, we're selfish human beings. And so we want to think about ourselves first, not the other person. And so that's what this is about. Not thinking about yourself first. It's about thinking about the other person first. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Being vain is being selfish. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. And humility, that is humble pie. We don't want to eat humble pie. We want to eat ego pie. We don't want to eat humble pie because humility requires us to say, okay, I'm going to
Die.
I'm just going to say to this prayer, yes, we need to die to ourselves. And I'm gonna stop thinking about myself right now and let me focus on my husband, or let me focus on my wife. Good morning, Debbie. Thank you for joining us. And so we're doing a marriage series. Marriage ain't no joke, not in a negative way, but just to say this is the real things that happen in marriage. We've been married 26 years in July. And we want to help any other couples that are struggling. And you may not even be struggling, but there's stuff in here that we all can use. And so the next passage is, and the two shall become one. Now, this one is one of my favorite ones. I'm not going through it, but it's one of my favorite ones because when people get married, it is the wedding, the ceremony, the whole day is so beautiful and blissful, right? Because we're talking about you're pushing my buttons, and this is learning to love beyond the honeymoon. You're pushing my buttons. You start pushing each other's buttons. After the honeymoon stage is over, and you're getting to know each other, then you start pushing each other's buttons, and that is where God begins to do. The two are becoming one, because this is us two, husband and wife, and this is us, and we're like two. But this is what God is doing when the two is becoming one. He is all this stuff in the middle is all this stuff that we're dealing with and going through as we stay in our marriage and work through things and go through seasons and all that. That is in the middle of us. And so God is slowly just merging you together as two, where you're becoming one, where you can only see one. God is about oneness in marriage. We've gone to the marriage retreat, and every year it's about oneness, because that's what God is trying to do with us. He's taking two people, and he's just like slowly over the years, just merging us together.
Two individuals.
Where we are, we're individual because God created all of us differently.
Not necessarily because I'm white or she's black, or it's just because there's just some things that I like and there's some things that someone likes. It's just, and that's just reality. Where that, we're two different people working together to come to an even ground.
Come to a place of oneness. Mm-hmm. That's the even ground that God is talking about. That two becoming one. And when people get married, I will sign that card and I will put that passage in there, whether I reference where it's at or I will write the two becoming one. God bless you as the two become one, because that is really what marriage is about, oneness. And why did God put that? And the two shall become one flesh. When you go back to Genesis, God created man, and every animal and man was created from dirt. That's just a side note. But anyway, the woman was pulled out of man. And so we came and then the woman produces man. It's amazing how God did that. Like he pulled her out of man and fashioned her, made her. And then for man to continue to come forth, he has to come through a woman. God is truly amazing. Can you really understand him? No, he's you can't understand him because he's not to be understood in that way. But God created, yes, all of us differently, but he still has a way of us becoming one, the two becoming one. And so in another passage, what causes fights and quarrels among us? What? It's because it says they don't come from your desires. They come from your desires that battle within you. Is because, let's break that down, because you don't get what you want, you don't get your way. That's really, now, I'm not saying there's not legitimate times that we're having a disagreement or conflict or quarrel or argument, because my mama used to say, wrong is right, and wrong don't right nobody. That's what my mama used to say. And so when you're not getting usually the way you want it, or we could say our way, in a certain situation, then we start having conflict, argument, disagreement, going back and forth. And it's God is saying that's why you're really arguing. It's not a quarreling. It's not because it's such a thing to even quarrel about. It's just you're not getting your way. Really look at that as a person in marriage. When you start to have a disagreement, let's look and see, really, is this legitimate, or is it really because I'm not getting what I want? Like if I want him to wear pink today and I'm having a disagreement with him, it's because I'm not getting what I want. Do he really have to wear pink? No. But if I want him to wear pink and I want to make a point of him wearing pink, then I'm going to start having a fit because he ain't wearing pink. And that's going back to when we first got married. I was like trying to get him to match me, when we would go to church or wherever. And he was just like, I'm not gonna match you. And so what's happening? We're having conflict, disagreement, and a quarrel because I'm not getting what I want. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna wear that. And so at some point I had to choose that battle. And now he will just automatically match me. He will just automatically put something on that matches what I match. But let's keep it real. It's because we don't get what we want. Not always because it's a legitimate reason why we're having a disagreement, a conflict. Again, I'm not discounting that, because we are married. We're husband and wife, regardless of the fact that we love God and we want to live our lives in our marriage according to what God wants. When it's come down to it, we're still husband and wife. We're still a man and a woman, and we're gonna have those things that we have between us. And before we started teaching, we played a video from TikTok, and it talked about like who's the first one to do this, and which one is this, and which one is that, and it was showing the difference of how different we are. But yet God is saying in this marriage series that he wants us two to become one. So when we get home from that honeymoon, because he and I we went to Maui for our honeymoon, very romantic, exotic place to go for a honeymoon, or as a couple, husband and wife. I think everybody should go at least once, but it's a very beautiful, exotic place to go. And it was just blissful on doing our honeymoon, And so then you get back from our honeymoon and here comes real life. Marriage becomes real when two imperfect people try to become one while still carrying, listen to this, different personalities. Because we are, as he said, we're individual. We both have different personalities. We all, somewhere along there, we all have wounds. If you don't have any, God bless you. You are a blessing, or you are blessed that you don't have any wounds. Habits. We all have some kind of habits, and then we have expectations. because we're husband and wife. Again, you're gonna have that expectation. We don't try to like, oh, we're up on cloud nine all the time, or oh, if he offends me, oh, it's okay. You know, that's not even being real, right? But in that, we're trying to work through to that place of oneness with God. And so your spouse, listen to these things, these bullets. Your spouse is not your enemy. Because we will look at our spouse as our enemy. Your real enemy is the devil, the enemy of your soul. And if you think the devil ain't real, you got, as my mama used to say, you got another thought coming. Because the devil is real. He is real. And so your spouse is not your enemy. Marriage doesn't create pressure. It reveals what pressure was already inside of us. This is already in us. When he or she or we start pushing each other buttons, it's because of something that's already in us that God is going to deal with through marriage. And then sometimes the buttons getting pushed are exposing areas God still wants to heal. Guys, and I have to say, almost 26 years, you know, you do get to a place where you start to calm down in areas within. There's still things that could be still happening that God wants to heal in us. You can't become one while still fighting to stay right all the time. I'm always right. That's how we are. Nope. And that's what causes that conflict and butting of heads and quarrelsome, is because each one of us is going to be right. I've seen a video, I think it's on social media, where each person say, you're right, I'm wrong. Each person say it to each other. I think I've seen it on social media where it's just like, I'm right, you're wrong. And the other person says, I'm right, you're wrong. And to try to get rid of that thing of, I'm the one that's right and you're the one that's wrong. And I'm not saying that that's never the fact, or one of us is right and one of us wrong. But many times when we're butting heads, it's because one person wants to be right. Love grows stronger when selfishness gets weaker. I like that. Love grows stronger when selfishness gets weaker. Love grows stronger when selfishness gets weaker, because we were talking about earlier about the verse says selfish ambitions. That was in Philippians 2:3-4. Selfish ambitions. So the honeymoon might end, but covenant love is supposed to grow deeper. So our honeymoon, we went to Maui, it was great, but we still had to come home and deal with life. We still had to come home and start living life together, because he and I did not live together before we got married. So there was none of that of already kind of knowing how the person is that you live with. No, we never lived together. We decided to wait until we got married before we lived together. And then I already had 2 children, 3 actually, but 2 were still at home. Marriage, and so let's see here, teaching some of these highlights. Learning to love after feelings fade. Love is a daily choice, because the honeymoon will fade away. Those honeymoon feelings, for the most part. Now, if you still married 26 years and you're still on your honeymoon, God bless you. Or you've gone back into a place of where you're like you're on your honeymoon, God bless you. And not to say that that can't happen, but love is a daily choice. Learning to love after our feelings fade. Marriage requires intentional effort. Intentional is the key word. Feelings fluctuate, but covenant remains. So our feelings are fickle. That means one day I might feel like I want to love him, and one day I might not, and he might feel the same way. One day he'll want to love me, one day he don't feel like loving me. He don't feel so loving toward me, right? Right? And so we all go through that, because you have to daily choose that I'm going to love this person. You have to daily be intentional in your effort to love somebody.
Well, we have to die to ourselves.
Amen.
Daily, because we'll just, it's like a record player. We'll just keep going back to the same cycle. You know, think we're single, but yet, you know, and it's so true when you get married and it's a happy time. You get to finally be with that person, and everything. Nobody can do nothing wrong. You know, every day. There's no quarrels during dating. There's no, fits during dating. You know, everybody loves each other, and you know, I feel like it was for us. You know, like oh my gosh, you know, and then we set the date, we got married, kind of stressful that day. We went through it, had a great reception, and then the next day we flew to Hawaii, and so there was no time of disagreement. It was just like, oh my gosh, you know, finally married. This is what we believe God has for us. This and that, and then when you come back, then it's like, you know, you then pick up your clothes, or you did this, or you know. And the biggest thing is like, you know, from a man's perspective, you know, like the thing was like, you when you're single or dating, you can go home. You go home. You know, like you may have a disagreement, but it's not heated. You know, like, and that's what I was feeling like. You know, like when you're single, like I would go to my place and Sylvia would be at her place, even though she had her kids at the time. You know, but then when we got married, that's when I'd like say that's where the rubber met the road, because now it's like now you really get to see, you know, I want to say the quarrels, the you know the
How we push each other
how,
buttons.
yeah, I was gonna say next the buttons where when you're dating, everything's like, oh, you know, like you know, like you know, I love you, and then you just blow it over. But when you're with that person every single day, and you know, it's sad to say that, but you know, there's times where, like Sylvia said, you know, like I'll love you one day and I don't like it the next day, or I'll be like I love you one day and I love you. It's because we're just like, oh, because we're fighting the stuff inside of us that like Sylvia said earlier, where the two become one. We're still fighting that for oneness.
And let me go. You just said it. The two becoming one, because that's where in our notes here it says becoming one is a process. We talked about that earlier. Let's go back to that. Becoming one is a process. So we are doing a marriage series. Marriage ain't no joke. And we're talking week one about pushing each other's buttons. And this is for anybody that, you know, is married, is gonna get married, engaged, even in relationships, because you know people do live together, and so marriage ain't no joke. And this is in a positive way. And if you're in an abusive marriage physically, then that is not right. That's unlawful. I would say get out of that situation, with the hope that the person will get help and maybe you can reconcile. But becoming one is a process, because God's math, we said it earlier, is 1 + 1 equals 1. Because we say, this is what we say, 1 + 1 equals 2. But God say 1 + 1 equals 1. Because in that middle part, we are becoming one. And it said in that verse earlier that we said about the two becoming one. I believe it was in where was it? It was in Genesis 2:24. It talked about the two becoming one. And I love to put that on a card to a newly married couple, because some of us have like no clue what we're in for when it comes to remaining in our marriage. We just keeping it real. We have no clue if you're going to be committed to your marriage and remain in your marriage. It's going to require you to go through those seasons in your marriage where you got all this stuff in the middle and you're becoming one. You're becoming one. Because again, with God's math, 1 + 1 equals 1, not 2. So you have two lives, two backgrounds, two communication styles, one covenant. That's what God is talking. That's what God is about. And He's about, you know, He knows you're two different people. He knows that you came from two different backgrounds. He knows that you have two different communication styles. But God's goal is the oneness. Marriage with God is about oneness. It's not about, well, I got this and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And ain't nothing wrong with having your own interests and things that you enjoy. He's a hunter. He hunts deer, pheasant, or at some point duck. I don't know. That's about it. He likes NASCAR. He likes I mean, he came with his own things that he likes. I'm a princess. I come from a totally different background. He came from a two-family home. I came from a single family home, a single mom with, 5 siblings. Actually, it was 7, but 2 were older. And so we come from different parts of life or areas of life, but yet God is about oneness, and He's about even breaking those things in us, those cycles that we learned when we were growing up. And so, how do we break some of these cycles? We got to stop and think before we say something, and that's so hard for us to do. What did that verse say earlier about
Think before.
quick to listen,
Oh.
slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Q2, S2, S2. Remember that. And I believe that was in, I got to go back and look. It was in James 1:19. James 1:19. James 1:19. I wish I had a producer behind the scenes to put this up. James 1:19. And it says, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. And so it's like we want to always say what we want to say right away. And God is trying to teach us, even with that verse, like listen first, and then wait, and then speak, and then don't get upset because the person is not saying what you want them to say. I know this is we're not in a fantasy world saying that if we just do this, everything will be all right. No, that's not where we're coming from. It's just this is helping us, and we've been living this, and we continue to live this. So think before you react. Let's try not to react. Try to respond. I've heard that said. Try to respond, then react. Because when you react, you just come from your emotions. But when you respond, you're stopping and pausing and thinking about what you're going to say. But we think that we have to respond so quickly. You be thinking like before we think about what we're going to say while the person is still talking. That's how we are. And then it says, pray before responding.
We don't consider the other person.
Right. We need to consider and just listen. And then it says, replace retaliation with grace. Because we are people who want to get back. Right. And God is about grace. God is about giving us something we don't even deserve. And so even if the person may deserve retaliation, God is saying, give grace. Give grace. Don't retaliate, and give grace to that person. And so, when I was growing up, I had a single mom, and there was 5 of us, 2 older ones that were out of house. And I had no model, no foundation, no example of marriage. My mom was married to my dad they were together when I was very young. At some point he left. I don't even remember him when I was young. All I know is I've always known that my mom was there, but I don't even remember my dad being there. But at some point they were together and he left. And so that was my example of even relationships, and then going into marriage. Never saw my mom be in a marriage. So I didn't even know what that really looked like. Only God could have helped me to be, and this is my second marriage. The first one lasted a couple, like 12 and a half years. And there was all kind of abuses in there, and even physical, all kind of abuses, drug abuse, mental, emotional abuse. And so I say that I was released from that marriage at some point. And so I had no clue what it was like to be in a marriage. And I can't say I wasn't even perfect in that marriage. I did things and said things. And so it wasn't just him. I have to admit to some of the things I did and said, but the main thing was those abuses that were going on. And then for him, you grew up with a mom and dad, 2 people. And so he did have a model of a husband and a wife in a marriage, right? So he had that model or that foundation or that example. But as he shares, he can't say that it was all a good model, right? Because we don't know what we don't know. And so we thank God for, and he had two brothers and himself. And so, and your parents many times do the best that they can,
Well,
right?
you know, and I'm not going to harp on that, but you know, like Sylvia said, so like if you, I'm not trying to be silly, but obviously if you know green means go and red means stop, I mean, it's pretty much the same. It's pretty much um, as easy as saying that. What I'm saying is that's what I saw, so that's what I thought it was like. And so if 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 someone teaches you instruction on how to do something, that's what you would follow. Now, because maybe there was no correction in that, you would always be. What I'm trying to say is you'd always be going forward. You know, sometimes you have to back up or put in reverse or even put in a neutral. But if there's no constructive criticism in there, and then you get into a marriage, um, that's where it may cause conflict because what I'm trying to say is because that's the model that that's the model that you were shown.
Mm-hmm.
Now there was good times and bad times,
Mm-hmm.
but yet you can't always use that perspective in your own marriage just because that's what you saw. That's what was good for them. That's what good. That was good for that couple, or that was good for the couple. But each couple is different. So if you just do the same thing, it doesn't always work, especially when you got two different people. That's what I'm trying to say.
And so here's the funny part that I feel is a safe story to share because his parents, my parents are no longer around, but his parents still are. And so we want to protect, certain people in our lives as we share each other. But when we got married, we were decorating our house. And I remember Mark was wanting us to have the same, I remember curtains, wanted us to have the same curtains that his mom had. And I'm like, and the same color. And I'm like, no, that's not going to work here. We're not going to have the same. So he was just like, he thought that what part of marriage was, well, like we would have our house and our decor look like my parents.
Well, I guess this is what I'm trying to say. In my eyes, it wasn't broken, but yet there was still some issues in that marriage that I didn't know. So what I'm trying to say is I just what I saw was the example that I went with, but yet now that I know the things I know now, I'm trying to say.
Right. But that's just a funny story of how we are like, and there are things I saw with my mom that I thought I could apply even in that first marriage that was not something that I could do like I thought I could. So again, like we either have a model or we don't have a model. It doesn't mean that any one of them is, right the way you do it, if I'm making sense. Because now God and our relationship with God is our foundation, our model, our example, how Christ loved the church and we're considered the church and the bride of Christ. And so when you look at that model and apply that to your marriage relationship, then that is what, as believers of God through his son, Christ Jesus, that is our model now. That is our foundation, is Christ in the church. And so as we wrap this up, we're going to give you a challenge as a couple. And the challenge are for the next 7 days. And this is for us too, to challenge each other that when one person is talking, try not to interrupt. Okay? And then when you're upset, try not to yell. And when the other person is talking and you need to respond to them, try not to react, try to respond. And then if you're not already doing this, pray together daily. If you're not already doing this, because selfishness turns conflict. Selfishness, selflessness turns conflict into connection. Selflessness turns conflict into connection. So when you stop being selfish,
So are you saying if it's not always about yourself, well then that's gonna stop the conflict.
right, and turn it into a connection. More
It's
so
not selfishness, it's selfness.
selflessness.
I can't think about myself now that we're in this marriage.
Right. It's a selfless situation. When you go into marriage, that is a selfless situation. But we don't see it that way. And you're probably gonna hear some of these things over and over throughout this series. And I remember I was reading a book. We were going through some marriage counseling. I was reading a book, and pastor gave it to us at the time, the pastor we had. And I forget what the book was called, but in the book it said you didn't get married to be happy, you got married to be holy. And I wanted to throw that book across the room because I'm like, what do you mean I didn't get married to be happy? I did get married to be happy. This is a goofy book. What is this author saying? And that made me upset that he said I got married to be holy. I'm like, what? And so I had never heard that before, of course. Didn't make sense to me, because who doesn't get married to be happy? Right? And yes, there's a part of it in somewhere in there, but it's so much more in that one and one becoming one, so much more in there than just being happy. And so you're gonna be pushing each other buttons. You're gonna be, working through things that's happening that you don't like about that person, that you want to change about that person. There's a whole nother discussion on trying to change somebody, believing that they're going to change because you married them. That's a whole nother discussion. But we're going to wrap this up with, when you become selflessness, when there's selflessness, it can turn conflict into connection. So this is our series, Marriage Ain't No Joke. This is week 1. We are Mark and Sylvia, leaders of New Breed Fellowship. We believe God has given us this series. And the first week was pushing each other's buttons. It's after the honeymoon time, and that time has faded. And now you're in real life learning to live as a husband and a wife. And so we thank you for joining us. Next week, we're planning on sharing about we are on the same team, because we will act like we're on separate teams, but we're on the same team. We're on the same team. And so as we wrap it up, we're going to play this video one more time that I played earlier. It's a TikTok video that we did years ago. I had red hair at the time, and it was showing how different really you are. But God is about covenant, oneness. And so let me play this as we wrap this up.
Who initiated the first kiss? Who apologizes first after a fight? Who is the funny one? Who is more romantic?
Wait.
Who is the most patient? Who's the better cook?
That's easy.
Who said I love you first? Who takes longer to get ready in the morning?
You definitely chose me for that.
Who is grumpier in the morning? Who's more stubborn?
You definitely chose me for that.
Who's the bigger baby when sick? Who is the social butterfly? Who is the messy one?
God, fuck.
Who sends the most money? Who loses their key?
And so that's just a funny example of us. We did that video on TikTok, and they're still out there doing those. But it just shows, the difference in how we even are, who spends the most money, who is the grumpier, who is whatever. It just shows that God created us all different, and that's okay. But when you're in a marriage, those differences are still okay, but it's learning to work together as one, because God is about oneness, even in the middle of what's going on in those two places, but you're becoming one. It's okay to have those differences, but your goal is oneness. And so we thank you for joining us. Pray for us, and we love you. And we don't even know you, but we love you. And remember, it's from His heart to our heart to your heart. And until next time, we want you to live well, take care of yourself, and God bless.